In the book of Proverbs, King Solomon introduces us to the two paths in life, the path of wisdom and the path of folly. Solomon also assures us that if we are inclined to choose the path of wisdom, then God will direct our path, God will protect our path, and God will correct our path. The destination of this path, Solomon tells us, is personal holiness, and the beginning of this path is a fear of God. The book of Proverbs reminds us that the awe of God ignites, supports, and defines faithful living. Fear of God is the beginning of wisdom.
I love that. That's great. Ethan did a great job with that. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge, Jamie, could you stand up? It's Jamie's birthday. Happy birthday. I won't ask you how old you are. No. All right, you didn't have to volunteer that, but that's great. Happy birthday, Jamie. Thank you for being here this morning on your birthday. I want to congratulate everyone who's been reading Proverbs every single day and accepting the Proverbs challenge that I gave you so many months ago. Such a great discipline. And if you read a proverb every single day, it only takes you 5 minutes. It's 31 chapters in Proverbs. You get to 31, you go all the way back to 1 again. You do that every single month. If you miss a day, doesn't matter, go to the next day, right? I've been doing it 46 years now, or 47 years. And I've missed chapters. It doesn't matter, you'll make it up. You got 47 years. Stephen Olford wrote that most of us know that the only life that counts for God is a life that starts each day in a quiet place with a definite time, a specific plan, and an expectant spirit to wait on God to speak, yet we don't have our quiet times. And my question is, why not? Why would we not have that? It doesn't mean a lot of time. It just means time every day. Why would we not spend time connecting with God's wisdom every day? Every day when I read the Proverbs, I get a gem. And it's weird because 47 years I've been reading it, but every day something pops out at me. So today is September 8th, right? And so the gem that I got today is Proverbs 8, 1 through 3, where Solomon says, "Does not wisdom cry out, and understanding lift her voice? She takes her stand at the top of the high hill, beside the way where the paths meet. She cries out by the gates, at the entry of the city, at the entrance of the doors." Wisdom is not hidden in universities or seminaries. It's not some high church thing. It's no secret that you need the formula to get it. She takes her stand on top of the high hill in plain sight of everyone, available to all of us. Wisdom personified cries out as widely and as broadly as possible. Why do we miss it? She speaks to those beside the way and where the paths meet. She makes her call in the most public places, by the gates, at the entry, coming and going. Wisdom is there. Wisdom is not hidden. She cries out to all who would listen. It's no secret. How do we miss it? Are we afraid of the rebuke or correction? Some of us are. Hey, I don't want to hear what God has to say. Because wisdom keeps us on the right path. Some don't want to hear that. But we should have the attitude of David in Psalm 141. With Psalm 141, verse 5, David says, "Let a righteous man strike me. That is a kindness." Doesn't feel like that sometimes, right? To be corrected. But if you're corrected by a righteous man, that is a kindness. "Let him rebuke me." That's oil on my head. To be rebuked by a holy man is oil on your head. What a blessing. My head will not refuse it. for my prayer will still be against the deeds of evildoers. Charles Spurgeon wrote, when an ungodly smile upon us, their flattery is cruel. Right? You can always tell what are you up to? When somebody's flattering you. But he says, when the righteous smite us, their faithfulness is kind. Wisdom is not hidden. It cries out to all of us all the time. Connect every single morning. You don't even have to read the whole proverb. Read one verse. In Proverbs 6, we find ourselves in Proverbs 6. We're going along. I asked God that I would stay alive to finish Proverbs. There's 31 chapters, so I'm going to live a long time. So I'm going slow, right? So God, I'll live to be 180. In Proverbs chapter 6, Solomon says to avoid these 5 things that'll ruin your life. 1, he says, avoid unwise financial entanglements. The wisdom in that 2,900 years ago is still true today. He says, avoid laziness by choosing diligence. Avoid the schemers, right? We used to call them on Long Island the square rooters. Avoid the square rooters. Avoid the 7 pillars of wickedness and avoid sexual sin. These are 5 surefire things to ruin your life financially, physically, morally, and spiritually. I'm going to cover 2 today. The first one is avoid unwise financial entanglements. In verses 1 through 5 in chapter 6, Solomon says, my son, if you become surety for your friend, if you have shaken hands in pledge for a stranger, you are snared by the words of your mouth. You are taken by the words of your mouth. So do this, my son, and deliver yourself, for you have come into the hand of a friend. Go and humble yourself. Plead with your friend. Give no sleep to your eyes, nor slumber to your eyelids. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, and like a bird from the hand of a fowler. Have you ever co-signed for somebody? Guaranteed a loan that somebody else made? What that means is somebody's applying for a loan which they can't afford. They don't have the buying power and they don't have the credit history. And so they ask you to guarantee the loan. You have to sign so that if they default, it's your debt, and it's your credit. And Solomon, this is 2,900 years ago, Solomon's saying that's a horror show. If you agree to this, Solomon says, you have been ensnared by your own words. It's often a deal between parents and children, and Solomon's saying it's a bad deal. It is biblically a bad deal. Don't take that deal, Solomon says. He says it's foolish. Now, I've never asked anyone to do this, but I've been asked to do this, and I have declined. And let me tell you something, I'm glad I did, because it would have turned out bad for me. And Solomon says, if you've done this, get out of it. Go and humble yourself, he says. Plead with your friend. Give no sleep to your eyes you could sleep with this hanging over your head, nor slumber to your eyelids. Do this as a gazelle would free themselves from the hand of a hunter. It'd bite his paw off to get out of that. Or a bird from the hand of a fowler. Desperately. Because you know what? You're dead meat. If you've done this, you're not in danger of becoming ensnared. Solomon says, you're ensnared. And he's telling you, don't take this deal. You can give the money without expectation of getting it back, but don't get into this deal. Now, unfortunately, whether you know it or not, you're already in this deal. Everybody here is in this deal. And the borrower who has ensnared you appears to have no intention of paying back the loan. And they're constantly increasing the amount that you owe. It's the government. It's funny, but it's tragic. And it's a road to disaster. Biblically, it's a road to disaster. See, while the current U.S. administration has projected a $1.6 trillion deficit for the current fiscal year, the Treasury has been borrowing at a $3 trillion annualized rate, almost twice the projected amount. This additional debt issued at today's interest rates will increase the Treasury's annual interest expense to over $100 billion. That's the interest you're paying. I'm paying it too. So between new debt issued and old debt, the Treasury will auction $10 trillion of debt this year. This is less than 1/3 of the federal debt, but it will cost $500 billion annually to just pay the interest. But the number of the debt is $32 trillion. How do we sleep? How do they sleep? Let me tell you something. They sleep just fine. God says this is a disastrous deal for us. And in reality, we actually have no recourse. You have a recourse when you vote. Who's leading me into disaster and who's trying to lead me into prosperity? That's really the answer. We have co-signed on the spending of a drunken sailor. It's a reckless system of money management that runs contrary to God's word. And we are dead meat. That's what Solomon says. I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I don't get into political stuff, but I look at this picture biblically and I say, this is a disaster. These are foolish people spending unwisely. And I don't know what all that means. But what Solomon says, if you're involved with a private deal like this, get out. You know, wise businessmen around the country, they are getting out of deals with states in our country. Because the states, it's not only a bad tax system, they tax them punitively for being successful. States like New Jersey, bad deal for businesses. States like New York, states like Massachusetts, Illinois, California, businesses flooding out of there, going overseas where they're creating jobs for people overseas because our states, and what do all those states have in common? I'll leave that up to you. Here's the message we must relay, and that people need to hear it, right? If somebody comes to you with this deal, listen, you can't afford it. That's okay. Godly wisdom says wait. Don't be surety for their lack of wisdom that they can't afford, or their lack of discipline that they can't wait. Because it will ruin you. If you're making these types of financial decisions, Solomon says, going to wreck your life. Second thing to avoid, he says, laziness by choosing diligence. And Solomon says, go to the ant, you sluggard. I love that word, sluggard. I'm bringing it back. I think sluggard should be, you are a sluggard. Yeah, my son, when he was a teenager, he had these friends. And they weren't all that bright, it was the light bulb was flickering, right? And I used to call, and Jonathan used to like hot tubs, so I used to call him Hot Tub Johnny. And say, here's Hot Tub Johnny and the Dullards. Sluggard and dullard I'm bringing back. And he says, go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer and gathers food in the harvest. How long will you slumber, O sluggard? When will you rise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall poverty come on you like a prowler, and need like an armed man. And Solomon's saying, if you're a sluggard, wake up. No one ever slept their way to a successful life. No one ever drifted their way to a healthy marriage. No one finds the treasure of the faith without digging. The problem is, when we hand people a shovel, they run. You got to dig to find the treasure. Solomon says, look at the ant. Look how the ant does it. You do it that way. A number of years ago, Jen and I were at the house, and there were ants. You know, we get a season where the ants come in Ocean City. And they were everywhere, right? And Jen's like, look at these ants, I can't believe these ants. I said, hey, you know, ants are diligent. They'll go where they need to go. They'll get there, you know. And she's like, I don't care if they're diligent, they're a pain. A couple of weeks later, I was making dinner, and we were going to the boardwalk, and I took the chicken out. It was wrapped. It wasn't open. It was in a thick bag. I took it out to thaw it, and when I came back and I opened up the bag, it was full of ants. I was like, look at these ants! They're everywhere. What do you think Jen said? They're diligent, honey. They are diligent. They ate through that thick bag and got in there. Ants are amazing, right? They are amazing. If you've never studied ants, you study ants. They are amazing. They are social creatures, and they live in colonies with very defined roles. Very defined roles. The queen populates the colony. The queen is the center. Soldier ants defend and will block the entrance with their heads. They will give up their bodies to protect the colony. And when a worker comes, they tap on the head to get in. That you, Joe? Worker ants are always female. They cannot reproduce. They can carry 20 times their weight. I think I have a thing here. Look at that, huh? They will carry 20 times their weight. Wouldn't that be great to have that friend? Hey, I'm moving Saturday. I'm only going to need 2 of you. And then the male ants only eat and mate with the queen. That's a great job. I could be an ant. I would be an ant. However, there are some ants now that have learned to clone themselves, so they no longer need the male, and so they eat the male. So it's like, if you're the male, you're like, what are you guys looking at? You guys seem to be cloning each other. Scientists says there's nearly 9,000 species of ants. They're everywhere except Antarctica. There are no ants. Well, they haven't found ants in Antarctica, right? You want to find an ant in Antarctica? Have a picnic. And you'll find, where do they come from? They will work alongside other species to get things done. Wow, if Christians could do that. Wouldn't that be awesome? And they will enslave other ants from other colonies that they conquer. The largest ant colony ever found was over 3,500 miles long in Argentina. Another reason why I'm not going to move into Argentina. And some ant colonies have been able to clone themselves, like I said, and do not require males any longer. So, unfortunately. And it's interesting that, it's interesting that Solomon says she. He doesn't know these scientific facts, but he says she. He talks about the ant, he says she. And Solomon says, consider the ant and be wise. And there's a number of things about ants. 3 things I want to talk about with ants, why we should consider them. Number 1, ants are diligent. They don't have to be told what to do. Ants know how to prepare for the season, and ants leave a trail of success. Number 1, ants are diligent. We should be as diligent as ants. That's what Solomon's saying. In Proverbs 12:27, it says, the precious possession of a man is diligence. The precious possession of a man is diligence. Why is it precious? Because it's not something you get. It's something you become. You become a diligent person by doing diligent things. And Solomon uses the Hebrew word harusum for diligence. I mean, someone who demonstrates constancy of purpose. People who have constancy of purpose, they don't get waylaid, right? They don't get off track. Ants don't wander around wondering, what are we going to do today? What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. I thought I'd go down there. No, what do you want to do? They don't do that. They have constancy of purpose. They're looking to prepare for the next season. Second, someone who's diligent is someone who is attentive and industrious. Solomon says, hey, you sluggard, take your cue from the ant. You know, some people make things happen. Some people watch things happen. And some people stand around and say, what just happened? Who are you going to be? Diligent people make things happen. And diligent people are persistent in an effort to accomplishing something. Jesus said, hey man, don't start unless you consider finishing. You're going to have these foundations all over the place, unbuilt buildings. You ever try to stop an ant? Ever try to stop an ant? You can't stop an ant. You put something in their way, what do? They go around it, they go over it. Ants find a way all the time. They got through that bag. That bag was thick. They got through that bag. Look at the people building the wall in the book of Nehemiah. They had all sorts of obstacles and attacks, but they kept working side by side, a brick in one hand and a weapon in the other. That's how they did it. They had constancy of purpose, they were industrious, and they were persistent because they had a goal in mind. And whether you're building an ant colony or a wall or a life, those are the things that make it work. That's what Solomon's saying. You know, my friend, this is back in 1973, 72, something like that. My friend Kenny Barkey, he got an ant farm for Christmas. I'd be like, all right, who gives an ant farm? Hey, let's get Kenny an ant farm for Christmas. But you know what? It was the greatest present. We sit there watching those ants all the time. When you put the ants in the colony, they get right to work. It's not like, oh, what are we doing here? What do we do? Nobody has to tell them. They know. And you know how they build that colony? One grain of sand at a time. Moving it one grain of sand at a time. Henry Cloud, the Christian psychologist, he writes, watching his ant colony, he says the activity of any individual ant seemed to have little impact. Nor was it apparent how a single grain of sand had much to do with the big picture of what was forming, but something great was forming. That's really what this is. The work of one particular person is not important. It's everybody together moving one grain of sand at a time. It's about each ant. It's about one pebble. It's about one after another, after another. The people in Nehemiah, each man one brick at a time, holding your weapon to protect yourself. When you have a great and difficult task, something perhaps almost impossible, if you only work a little at a time, every day, a little at a time, suddenly work will finish itself. We help people set up goals, and we say, look, you want to have a big, hairy, audacious goal. You want to have a big goal. Oh, I can't. That's too big. Listen, we're not only going to show you how to set up a goal, we're going to give you disciplines every day, moving a grain of sand to get you towards that goal. And the next thing you know, whoa, I did it. I can't believe I did it. I did it. I look at my life as a building project. And every brick, right? I'm moving bricks all the time. Every brick is the experiences in my life. It's the hockey games I've gone to with my kids and the hockey games that I've coached. It's the diapers that I've changed. It's the funerals. It's the weddings. It's the everyday disciplines. And the mortar is the commitment to my family, my philosophy on life, my marriage, my attitude. And the foundation is Christ. That's what I'm building on, that foundation. With people going to get baptized today, you're creating a foundation. And you're going to build upon that. And listen, hey, you may be here and say, hey, that doesn't work for me. Okay, you've got a better idea. You may not have that as a foundation, but everyone is building some sort of house. What is it built on? You know, Jesus tells the story of two men. Two good men. He doesn't say one's good, one's bad, one's good. He says one's wise and one's foolish. And they're building a house, and one builds on the sand, and one builds on the rock. And he says, when the rain came, and rain's coming, right? Rain's coming in your life. The streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the homes, and the one built on the sand, what happened? It was a mighty fall, a total loss. But the one built on the rock stood. He may have suffered loss, but it wasn't total loss. You know, anybody who's lived through hurricanes here in the Northeast, we can relate to storms, right? We can relate to water. Storms are going to come in life, and water's going to rise. It's where your foundation is. Where's your foundation? Now, back to my friend with the ant colony. From time to time, Kenny was a little strange guy, and most of my friends were. Birds of a feather, right? From time to time, Kenny would take the ant colony and just shake it up. That's what we didn't have cable TV, you know. We had ant colonies. Very, very limited, channels and ant colonies. So that's how we got our amusement. And we would see, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? What do you think they did? They started over. They shook themselves up and they started right away. They didn't say, hey, forget this. This guy's crazy. I'm not doing it. I'm taking a rest. They went back and moving one grain of sand at a time. They started all over. One ant, one grain of sand at a time. You know, you're going to get your lives shaken up. We just heard from Grief Share. You're going to get your life shaken up. And sometimes you're left with the bricks all over the place, right? I've had my life shaken up. I've seen the bricks all over the place, and just where do I start? But I had good people around me. I had great people around me. They're still around me. People like Chris in the back, Chris Abbott. People like Dominic. Put their arms around you, man. It's okay. It's all right. Pick up a brick. Get moving. Do the next right thing. And here's what I learned. One brick at a time. Do the next right thing. Keep moving forward. Just keep moving in the right direction. And just like ants, I moved forward one brick at a time and rebuilt my life. I can show you in my journals. I saved my journal. Who here journals? Man, if you don't journal, man, you got to journal. You got to journal. I look back 14 years in my journals, and I see where I was moving bricks, and it just seemed I was never going to get. And look where I am. Some of you say, well, I don't want to go where you are. Maybe that's true. But my life, if you look at it 13, 14 years ago, my life is so great now that God bless that work. And eventually you get a breakthrough in your life. You say, wow, I didn't see this coming. It's a great book that I read years ago, Good to Great. Anybody ever read this book? Good to Great. It's a business book, but it has phenomenal personal applications. And he says in the book, breakthrough results come by a series of good decisions, diligently executed, and accumulated one on top of another. That's how ants repair a colony. That's how Israelites built the wall. That's how you build a life. That's how you build a ministry. Next good idea. Every grain of sand is not important, right? But every grain of sand is important to the whole. The UCLA Bruins basketball team, they won 10 national championships in 12 years. That's unheard of. But John Wooden coached from 1948 to 1963, 15 years without winning. We would not put up with a coach like that. We want to win right away. But he spent 15 years building a program that became unbeatable. Every practice, he said, wasn't important. But the diligence he was building in his team and in himself, in those practices, was building a basketball dynasty. Nobody will ever match that. Diligence is not something you get. It's something you become. Ants don't have to be micromanaged, right? They know their job and they get to it. If you have somebody you have to micromanage, you've hired the wrong person. Second, ants prepare for the seasons. King Solomon says ants store up their food in the summer. All summer long, ants are thinking about the winter. Got to store up for the winter, store up for the winter, storing up provisions. Understanding the seasons is essential, a life that works. See, here's the truth. We live in a system of constant and predictable change. How often does winter come? Huh? You got to think about that. Every year, right? It's not like we go from fall to spring. Well, what happened to winter? I don't know. It just didn't come. You ever hear the person say, hey, Christmas snuck up on me this year? Where you been? You just get here yesterday? It's the same time every year. And ants know it. So they store up. They listen to their environment. We're all going through winters. You're going to go through winters. No one is immune. But to be a good steward, you must be prepared. Jim Rohn, R-O-H-N, Jim Rohn, you ever see look at some videos by him on YouTube. And he used to say, hey man, you got to be prepared for the winters. Look, nobody wants to go through winter. You can tear January off the calendar, but it's coming. You can't ignore it. It can be depressing. It can be cold. It can wound your soul. Like David says in Psalm 42, my soul thirsts for God. My tears have been my meat day and night. Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you disquieted in me? See, that's a winter. That's the dark night of the soul. But in the winter, the ants draw on the productivity of the rest of the year because they know winter's coming. How often does winter come? Every year. And if you don't obey the lessons of the seasons, you will pay. Right? Solomon says you either learn how to plant in the spring or learn how to beg in the fall. I'm 68. I planned. But I had people pushing me to make me plan. Ants don't beg. Listen to that. If you don't learn how to plant in the spring, you better learn how to beg in the fall. And God does want to see his people begging. You see, enterprise, the ant has learned, is better than ease. You know what the cost of your TV is? I mean, it's got a price, right? The price of buying the TV is nothing. As a matter of fact, they get cheaper and cheaper all the time. Watching the TV is a true expense. Watching your phone is a true expense. And look, let me tell you something. I can go down that rabbit hole just like this. Ongoing studies show that the average American family has a TV on. They're not necessarily sitting there watching it, but they have it on for 7 hours a day. Are you kidding me? It's like a job. What are they watching? Who's discipling us? Let me tell you something. The people on TV, they're not interested in discipling. You know what they're interested in? Eyes. Eyes on their product. Whether they agree with you politically or they don't agree with you politically, they don't care. They know that neuroscience teaches them that if you are liberal, you'll watch a liberal channel. If you are conservative, you'll watch a conservative channel. They don't care about your life. They want eyes. Consider that. Ants are not watching TV. They're storing up for the winter. Jonathan Edwards was a pastor in New England in the 1700s. And he wrote down some principles to intensify his life for the glory of God's kingdom. And he wrote, I am resolved never to lose one moment of time, but to improve it in the most profitable way that I possibly can. How about you ask yourselves, is this the most profitable way for me to spend my time right now? Look, I can sit and watch football all day. But years ago, I sat down and I was like, first of all, these guys are making millions of dollars. If they lose, I don't care. It's still millionaires. What do they care about me? They want to win, I'm sure. But it doesn't affect their lives. Why would I allow it to affect mine? I like to watch football, but is this the best way to spend my time? There's nothing wrong with ease and leisure, but that shouldn't be the object of our affections, right? It should be the reward of our productivity. That's what Solomon's saying. Ants store up food all summer because they know winter is coming. How often does winter come? Every year. Winter's coming, right? It's not just the season, but it could be the season of your life. What are you doing to prepare? Prepare now. Let the roots of your faith go deeper now. There's no cramming on a farm. Anybody here grow up on a farm? Right, okay. So when you grow up on a farm, you don't wake up one day and say, oh, tomorrow's harvest. I haven't planted anything. Okay, kids, let's go plant and water because tomorrow's harvest. It's months before you plant. All the work must be done in the proper time. That's what the ant teaches us. What work are you doing right now to prepare your souls and to support your souls for the winter that's coming? I think you should read a proverb a day, but that's up to you. The winter seems a distance away, right? In the summer. It gradually draws near, and soon it will come. Solomon says in Proverbs 24, this is one of my favorite passages. He said, I went past the field of the sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed, and I learned a lesson from what I saw. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. That didn't creep up in one day. That scene that he's looking at didn't catch anyone by surprise. It's been years of neglect that brought that guy to that way. The weeds overgrowing and the walls broken down. And it leads to misfortune and ruin. You should never let the conditions of your souls look like that. Creation instructs us to mimic the wisdom of the ant. I was explaining to my son the seasons of life. Prepare now, man. It seems like a far way off. It does. But those years go like this. They go like this. The next thing you know is, well, how did I get here? Don't leave it to neglect. Your life will prosper. Bad seasons are going to come, but be like the ant, be prepared. When we store God's blessings in season, they will unfold in the midst of stressful and distressing circumstances. I can tell you that is true because I've been through those distressful times. Don't get caught short in the winter. Look, Jesus said, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy it and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. And my friend was telling me, hey, man, my life's going good. The economy's great. My 401k, man, I'm blessed, man. My 401k has grown. And I said, that shouldn't be the measure. That's good. That's not a bad thing, but that shouldn't be the measure. How has your soul grown? Because you know what? Let me tell you something. Your fat 401k could be something, if you die tomorrow, you leave to somebody else. But where are you going? Where are you storing up your real treasures? That's where you're going to draw on that for eternity. And lastly, ants leave a pathway to success. It's amazing. Scout ants go out and they forage for food. And when they find something edible, they return to the colony, but they leave a trail. You ever see the ants going on a trail? Where are they all going? Everybody's following each other, right? That's because the scout ant found a trail to some food, probably in my kitchen. He secretes an enzyme, pheromone, and that allows the other ants to find the source of food. Ants are amazing, right? And I can see this is true because I've seen my sons do this, right? My good friend, Craig, owns Smithville Bakery, little shout out for him. And he makes these, I love the peach pie. And he makes the peach pie. So he makes me a peach pie, and I would bring it home, and my sons, like trails of ants, would go and eat all of it. And I would know they were there because they'd leave the tray. I mean, like, that's the ultimate insult, isn't it? Oh, yeah, we had it. You could throw it away. There's an old saying that success leaves clues, right? Read the biographies of successful people, successful Christians, successful businessmen. There's no new formulas, right? 2,900 years ago, Solomon gave it to us. And every year, my nephew Danny and I, we talk during the World Series. He's in California, I'm in New Jersey. We're watching the World Series, texting each other. Oh, did you see that play? Oh, yeah, I saw that play. Yeah. See that pitch? Yeah. And you know, every single year, the World Series is won or lost on a fundamental mistake. Things they go over in spring training every year, things they've been doing all their lives, they make that mistake in the biggest moment of their lives. Every year, fundamentals destroy teams. What are the fundamentals of our faith, right? Do you know them? My question to me is, am I leaving a trail of success for my children and my grandchildren? Am I leaving a trail of faith? Am I leaving a trail of faith? How do we create that path? You know what? It begins today. If you're getting baptized today, it begins today. And for us supporting those people on their beginning of their journey. And Solomon warns, look, you got to rise from your sleep, man. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, and your poverty shall come on you like a prowler, and your need like an armed man. What's the danger of an undisciplined day? Oh, one undisciplined day can ruin a family. One undisciplined day can ruin generations of a family. But a disciplined, God-filled day can affect generations of a family as well. You see, the danger is concluding that there's no damage has been done, but the threat is real and the threat is sure. You know, the ant who finds the food, the ant who goes out, the scout that finds the food brings tremendous value to the colony. Those of us in our families who find Christ first, we bring back tremendous value. Not everybody will value it right away. Are you creating a trail of some kind? Is it bringing value or distress? Path that leads to a happy, healthy, God-honoring life begins today at baptism. How do we create that path to lead others to Christ? Really comes down to how we live our lives, right? People watching us. People are watching us. It's not what we say. It's really how we live our lives. There's a great Spanish poem written by Antonio Machado, and it's recorded as a song by the Paperboys. It's called Cantadas. I hope my Spanish is good enough here, but it starts off, the opening verse is, Todo pasa y todo queda, pero lo honesto es pasar. Pasar haciendo caminos sobre la mar. We are passing through life making a trail, creating a path. The path is made by walking. A masterpiece, right? A masterpiece is created one stroke at a time. A poem is written verse by verse. The song says, golpe a golpe, a verse of verso. Stroke by stroke, verse by verse. It's about each ant. It's about one pebble. It's about one step at a time. It's about each man, one brick at a time, one grain of sand. Each one of us doing the next right thing. And it begins today at baptism. When I was baptized September 10th, 1978, the guy who baptized me, Mr. King, he said, Terence, you just changed your family tree. I was 22 years old. I don't have a family tree. I don't know what he was talking about. You just introduced eternity into your family tree. Wow. You know, I didn't really understand the breadth and the power of that statement at 22. At 68, I do. My wife and I teach our grandchildren the Bible. Are you kidding me? You get to be that hero who leaves the trail. Don't take that lightly. It's important. The influences you're putting on your family right now will make a difference generations down the road. As we close this morning, members of the care team will be up here to pray. If you want to get baptized, if you're not registered, we'll baptize you. Not in the back of a truck or something. I said in Kentucky there's this revival, right? And they're filling the backs of pickups with water and baptizing people in the back of pickups. I was like, of course they are. Kentucky. We don't do that in New Jersey. We have an ocean. But if you'd like to be baptized today, hey, look, man, I want to begin the trail today. You may not see it for a while. You may have to wait till you're 68 to see it. But you get to begin it today. There'll be members of the care team up front here waiting to pray for you and to anoint you with oil. Pastor Gene, do you have your oil? Yes, I do. Oh, man, come on. Let them anoint you with the oil and pray over you with the Holy Spirit. And there'll be members of the care team outside, too, to talk to you and pray with you. So, in closing, let us pray. And I always like to end with this prayer that Paul gives the Ephesians in Ephesians chapter 3. So bow your heads. And I pray that God puts his name on you and blesses you. I pray that God would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in the inner self, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, and that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the width and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ, which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to all fullness in the fullness of God. Amen.